Enola Holmes is back and better than ever. Maybe, I haven't watched the film yet. In case you haven't watched the first Enola Holmes film, this is Enola Holmes, younger sister of Sherlock Holmes. One day, her mum goes missing. She goes out to find her mum. Then she almost drowns and solves the crime. Okay, moving on. The movie starts with Enola Holmes being chased by the police. Before they catch her, we are thrown into a flashback. The flashback starts with Enola talking about how she opened her own detective agency, but due to many factors such as her age and gender, she's not getting many jobs. I mean, I understand. If my husband had been kidnapped and was being held for ransom, I would not want someone who cannot legally drive to attempt to try and find him. Just before Enola gives up, a little girl called Bessie Chapman comes in to ask for help to find her sister. Enola goes back with the girl to her house, which I feel like is very dangerous. They do this in the dead of night. This could have been a trap. When they get to the house, they meet another girl who lives with them called May. May is very against Enola helping. May seems to know more than she's letting on. After walking around the room and touching all these things, like detectives do, usually, Enola agrees to help Bessie. Enola finds several clues, such as an unusual lipstick and paper that someone tried to burn. The next day, Bessie takes Enola to where she works at a match factory, which is where she last saw her sister, Sarah. Yeah, I forgot to mention her name. She has a name. It's not just Bessie's sister. Who would have guessed? Sarah works at the match factory too. Enola goes undercover pretending to be one of the workers. She is awful. She's very noticeable, meant to blend in. She might as well put a light bulb on her head. She figures out she needs to get into the foreman of the factory's office. She gets in there and breaks into a safe. She finds a book with important information. In the book, she also finds a ginger hair. Sarah has ginger hair. Enola notices some of the pages are torn out. Enola overhears the owners of the factory discussing how they're losing money and she almost gets caught. Dun dun dun. She sneaks back out of the office and notices May has been watching her the entire time. After work, she follows May to a theatre and discovers May's performing. Sarah was also working at the theatre with May. May is very reluctant to help and storms off. Enola talks to a man who also was at the theatre. Apparently, Sarah had a man who was very interested in her and left letters for her. Enola finds one of the letters and it contains a really weird poem. Enola leaves the theatre where a man with a cane starts following her. She can't see him, but she can hear him. Whilst trying to avoid the pursuer, she bumps into her brother being thrown out of a pub. She takes the drunken Sherlock Holmes home. The next day, they argue and Enola leaves to sit on a park bench and stalk the guy from the last movie. Remember him? Then they bump into each other and she pretends she had no idea he'd be there. Then after this very short conversation with Tewkesbury that had no connection, she figures out the poem is a riddle leading to an address. This trope in mystery films where the main character figures out something completely unrelated is always so funny to me. For example, they find a shoe, they find a box. Shoe? Box? Oh my gosh, it's so obvious what they're planning to do. They are going to steal the Eiffel Tower. Sir, how did you come to this conclusion? How did you get from shoe box to Eiffel Tower? There was no connection. It's like in math class when your teacher tells you to show you're working out. Please. Upon arriving at the address, Enola finds May bleeding. She then dies. Rip her. The police then show up and Enola hears the familiar cane from the person who was following her the night before. It belongs to the superintendent. He then accuses Enola of stabbing the girl. Enola kicks the superintendent and jumps out of a window. It is exactly like that scene in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Enola is fleeing the police. Then it brings us back to the start of the movie. Remember that? Then Enola almost drops off a roof. Very dramatic. She manages not to die, then goes to hide from the police at her brother's house. Whilst there, she finds a newspaper and then realizes what was on the burnt piece of paper she found in Sarah Chapman's home. It was an announcement for a ball. Enola concludes she has to go to the ball to find Sarah. Whilst there, Enola figures out the one who wrote the poem is the son of the owner of the match factory. Whilst at the ball, she runs into Tewkesbury again and asks him to teach her how to dance so she can get close to William, the son of the matchmaker. After a lot of pestering, finally convinces William to dance with her. Whilst waiting, Enola bumps into a girl called Cicely, who notices Enola watching Tewkesbury. Enola denies it and suggests Cicely, her name is Cicely. Enola suggests Cicely go dance with Tewkesbury. After she begins to dance with William, she starts to ask him a lot of questions about Sarah, which freaks William out. He tells Enola they are being watched and they can't discuss this here. William agrees to meet her later. Enola goes to the agreed meeting point and Tewkesbury follows her, telling her it's not a good idea to meet with a man she thinks is the murderer alone. Just as William enters the room to see Enola and Tewkesbury arguing, the police, being led by Superintendent Greyhound, burst in the room and arrest Enola. They drag her into a cell, and in the cell, the superintendent questions Enola about Sarah's whereabouts and makes it known that he's being bribed, capture the girl, and get the information that she has. Sherlock learns that his little sister has been arrested and tries to get her released, but Superintendent Greyworm says he has Enola's fingerprints on the murder weapon, which confuses Sherlock. Enola told him she didn't touch the murder weapon. Enola is then sentenced to be hung and is taken away by Grey's Anatomy and his men to the women's prison. Sherlock, finally admitting defeat, asks Edith, the friend of his mother, to help Enola. Enola's mother and Edith break Enola out of prison with a bunch of massive explosions. Her mum likes explosions a bit too much. I kind of skipped it earlier, but at the beginning of the film, she blew up a letterbox. After a very intense horse and buggy chase, the women get away, and her mother then sends her off back to London to finish the case that she started. I'm all for freedom, but your child has almost died multiple times doing this singular case. At least recommend that she's a bit more careful. At this point, Sherlock has figured out that his and Enola's cases are connected and being controlled by someone called Moriarty, who is toying with Sherlock. I figured that out earlier. After returning back to London, Enola visits Bessie again to ensure she knows that she's still looking for her sister. Yes, she might have just came back from jail, but the grind never stops. Enola, looking around the room once again, like a weirdo, and touching everything, notices that Sarah was experimented with the old red matchsticks and the new white ones. She then realises the new white matchsticks are lethal and that Sarah must have realised this too, and that the matches were killing all the girls that worked at the factory. She also concludes that Sarah and William were working to expose it. Whilst visiting Tewkesbury, Enola realises that Cicely is Sarah. I realised this at the dance, so I'm feeling really smart right now. Just call me Kelby Holmes. Oh, and then Tewkesbury and Enola confess their love to each other. Finally, it only took 2 movies. They then go back to the match factory, where Enola and Tewkesbury run into Sherlock. He explains how the police got Enola's fingerprints, and they head up to the office and discover William's dead. Aww. The 3 of them then figured out that Lord McIntyre has struck a deal with Mr. Lyons, the old one, not the dead one, to use cheap phosphorus to increase profit. Sherlock also realises William's murder is set up to make it look like Lord McIntyre killed him, but it was staged, so someone must be trying to frame him. I mean, he still killed all those girls in his... It's not like he's innocent. Him being framed for murder is not like he's being framed for a crime he didn't commit. Enola then realises the sheet music that she found earlier on May's dead body is a map of the theatre that they work at. They head to the theatre. On the way, these 2 kiss. I feel like the dead body you just found should probably kill the romance in the air, no pun intended. But apparently not. Sarah finally reveals herself, and she said that the reason she was trying to get to Tewkesbury was because she needs his help to expose Lord McIntyre. Just then, Grumpy Pants and his band of idiots arrive, and they all start fighting. At some point, Sherlock gets shot. Not fatally, don't worry. Gruesome over here is an awful shot. Like, he is concerningly bad. He shot at Enola multiple times and missed every time. You should get that looked at, mate. I mean, he can't get it looked at now because he's dead, but maybe in the next life. Rip Grail, which is his actual name. Lord McIntyre arrives with Lestrade. Moriarty is revealed, and it ends up being Mira Troy, who works alongside Lord McIntyre. It was quite obvious. And I know the movie's aimed at children, but children are stupid. Mr. Killer of Kids over here then burns the evidence that he's been poisoning people and he's known all along with the list of girls' names that he killed in the factory. Mira over here is taken into custody. Enola, Sarah and Bessie tell all the girls they are being poisoned by the matchstick. This convinces the girls to storm out and to strike. McIntyre is arrested while Moriarty escapes police custody. Enola sets up Sherlock with Dr. John Watson because she thinks Sherlock is lonely and needs friends. Personally, I found the Moriarty reveal to be very underwhelming. I watched a lot of Sherlock media, both TV shows and movies. In one of them, Moriarty shot a guy for saying his name. Normally, Moriarty is like controlling a whole crime syndicate, but in this, Moriarty was just robbing the rich. like some confused Robin Hood. I hope she causes more havoc at some point. Oh, and I found out this is based on a true story. Obviously not the Enola and Sherlock part because they're not real, but the match strike situation happened in real life. You learn something new every day. I did dislike how much Sherlock was in this film. I feel like they should have introduced Enola's own nemesis, because realistically, if I want to see Sherlock and Moriarty going head to head, I could watch or read countless other things. I was watching this for Enola. This movie felt like a spin-off for Sherlock Holmes. It felt like a backdoor pilot for his own movies in his sister's film. And it's not that I don't like Sherlock. For once, things aren't about him. Overall, I enjoyed it. I hope you guys all liked the video. Bye!